Welcome, everybody. I'm having a fun pre-chat with Lee Shorten. You can see him on Apple TV today. Today is December 17th, and Swan Song is out today. So congratulations on that, Lee. How's it going? Have you been getting many phone calls from people saying that they're already streaming it?
Well, first, thank you, and thank you for having me here. Things are good. No phone calls, but I guess it's because it's the 2021. A lot of texts and DMs, but no
It's true.
phone calls.
Yeah. Very cool. And have you snuck out and watched it already, or?
Yeah, I was lucky that we premiered at AFI a couple of weeks ago, and Apple had me out, so I got to see it then, and yeah.
Very cool. I actually, what I didn't do is I didn't look at any of the pictures, but any of the photos of you sitting next to Mahershala Ali or Glenn Close, excuse me, or Naomi Harris. Anybody? Any close-up photos of you on the guys
From the film or from the premiere?
from the premiere?
Well, only Mahershala, and then Dax was there, and Aquafina, and so no, but there's a couple of me and Mahershala, but yeah.
Very cool. Aquafina, I'm so sorry I didn't mention her. I love Aquafina. She's awesome. Yeah, it's a really big deal. I don't have Apple TV, but I've meant to kind of get it, and I think now this gives me another motivation to go ahead and so I can watch it.
I mean, for this and for Ted Lasso, of course, which is so good. So.
Yeah. And the morning show, I think I've heard really good things about the morning show. So I think I'm convinced. I'm getting an Apple TV. Apple, you got me yet again. On all the devices, everything, Apple. Perfect. Well, listen, for those people who don't know you and who haven't seen you in Man on the High Castle or anywhere else, Supernatural, we can go on your IMDb Pro, but tell people a little bit about yourself and how you kind of got to be in a scene with Mahershala.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a longish story. I'll try to be the cliff notes. I grew up in Australia. Never really wanted to be an actor or anything. Went to law school, was a lawyer for a while, hated that so much. Then decided, you know what, I'm going to move to Canada and check out this acting thing.
Yeah.
And then I got really lucky, just had a lot of good breaks. And then this was one of them, just an audition came in, and I was very fortunate that they liked my tape. And then I had a meeting with Ben, and we talked about it, and he liked me and was gracious enough to have me out.
That's very cool. There are many pieces that I want to dive into based on what you said, but in terms of Vancouver, I've had the pleasure of having many Canadian actors on, many from Vancouver, and maybe this is kind of my perception of it, but the Vancouver acting community seems to be really tight, and I have not spoken to anybody who is not a good person. Everybody just seems to be really lovely people who are pulling for each other.
Yeah, it is definitely like because it's a smaller pool, so everyone does tend to know each other, and I think at least in most of my circles, it is a bit like you're just rooting for each other because you know what it's like. You know what I mean? And too, as an actor, we all know what this industry is like, and if you're not here to help each other, then I just think that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah, and again, you're Vancouver was a great choice for you to move to because Toronto has a lot of stuff as well, but Vancouver is awesome. If I were moving somewhere, it'd be Vancouver. I'm in Chicago, so we're in the developing market as well, but Vancouver has a lot more stuff that's being shot.
I mean, I love the Windy City though. Chicago's a great town, and you're right. There's a lot of cool. They're filming the Paper Girls adaptation, not the Paper Girls, the Shining Girls adaptation there, right? So that's pretty cool.
No, it's Chicago is getting better and better and better, and we have more sound stages and we have a lot more productions going on. So it's definitely far better than what it was, 10 years ago. But I don't think we're at that level yet where we're like, we can just stay here. Although the same stuff that happens to Vancouver happens to us, Toronto, all the secondary markets, which is you want to work in Chicago, you have to be from LA or from New York.
Totally.
Yeah. So is that what led you to LA? Because there's the old adage of don't move to LA, let work move you to LA. Is that what happened for you?
Yeah, Vancouver was very good to me, but it felt like it was time to move to LA, and I was also fortunate enough that I did have a job to bring me here.
Yeah,
I came down to do Ghost of Tsushima, so things just kind of aligned, except for the whole pandemic. But
I know. I also I was looking at your background. I found this funny in a bad way of, hey, I'm a lawyer. I'm going to go to a different country. I'm going to start acting. Oh, great! Everything is going wonderful. Pandemic shut it all down.
yeah, you can't plans. What's the
Yeah,
saying? Best laid plans, whatever. So
yeah. Yeah, yeah, and there are all sorts of things, and they all mean the same thing, right? We can plan, and then God tends to laugh at those plans. Although I don't know if I truly kind of believe in that, because I'm a big believer in law of attraction, and
Mhm.
the planning, the visualization, all the work that you're doing. I've seen that work a lot, so I'm not sure if I'm on that God laughs at our plans boat.
Fair enough. I mean, I do, you're right. You still should plan and send out positive vibes and do all the things because that is in your control, and you just got to have the attitude, right? So,
Yeah. So let's back up, because I wanted to dive into a few things, and let me know if you're okay talking about this or not, because
yeah, of
again, it's
course.
it's 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 your life. But from what I understand, you were adopted. You were born in Korea, and then you were adopted by a white family, and then that's how you ended up in Australia. How old were you when you got adopted?
Yeah, I was 6 months old, so very young.
Okay, got it. So again, I'm white, so I can speak to being different from the majority of people. The only thing that I can say that's a little different about me is the fact that I'm an immigrant and I'm a Jew. So knowing what it's like to be discriminated against, I have that. I've seen many
Yeah.
instances of it, and then being from another country and trying to assimilate, those things I've dealt with as well. So being someone of Asian descent and then growing up in a white family, was it easy? Was it difficult to kind of assimilate? Did you find that people were treating you different because you're Asian?
Yeah,
What was it like for you?
adoption is such a weird thing that's so
Yeah.
hard to kind of wrap your head around because because you're so young, right? You're 6 months old and you're adopted and then you're raised by a white family in this really white community. Essentially, you're being raised white, right?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, you don't look white. So when you're interacting with people in the world, they don't treat you like you're white. Like so you do experience a lot of racism, and so then there's this really strange disconnect between the way the world perceives you and the way you've been raised to perceive yourself, and then it becomes a strange thing because you're experiencing like racism, but you actually have no one else in your life who understands what that is or who can talk to you about it.
Yep.
So it's just a very strange thing that I think I'm still dealing with.
Yeah, again, I can't imagine. I can only, sympathize. There is no ability for me to empathize because I don't know what it feels like. But I just, I can think it through logically, right? Of growing up, because I remember the first time that I was discriminated against as a kid. Um, Somebody in school, I think I was 8 or 9 years old. Somebody in school called me a dirty Jew, and
Jesus.
this was back in Ukraine. And I cried. I came up to my parents, ran up to my parents, saying they're calling me this thing. What does it mean? Because we were not religious. So somebody was discriminating against me on something that I had no identity with, and I had no idea
Mhm.
what it meant. And my first, thought was, I don't want to be that thing. Whatever they're calling me, I don't want to be it. And they said, well, do you love your grandfather? Yes, he's a Jew. Do you love, And then they kind of went through that thing, and that's how I understood that I was different, even though I never thought of myself as different. So, growing up as an Asian kid in a white family with in a way, a white identity, but people were identifying you as something that you didn't quite understand. I can relate to that a little bit, but it must have been very difficult.
Thank you. And again, I'm sorry that happened to you as well, because that's
Yeah,
awful.
people are ignorant. What can you do?
Right. And I guess, in the same way for you, like it has its moments, but at the same time, you're just living and you just seem to deal with it, like,
Right.
yeah. So, yeah.
So when did how did you form the identity? Because, to put another thing on top of that, I saw in one of your interviews that you did a DNA test recently. So you found out that you were, half Korean, quarter Japanese, and quarter Chinese. So how is that forming of the identity and understanding who you are and where you fit in? How does that, work for you?
Yeah, these are good questions. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because growing up in a in a white family, in a white community, I didn't understand the cultural nuances and history of the various East Asian races, and so it's
Yeah.
like it, and they have such a fraught bad history, particularly Korea and Japan, and it
Right.
was kind of interesting to me because Australian media is very white, but in my teen years there was this channel called SBS, and they started broadcasting a lot of foreign media, and that's how I got introduced to Japanese anime. And then so my kind of first real connection to Asia was through Japan, and
Mm.
so I sort of felt like not Japanese, and again I thought I was purely Korean, but that was kind of my first intro to Asia, and then Korea would come later. And but again, growing up and seeing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and all these things, I didn't make the distinction between. It was just Asian to me, which is
Yeah.
so ignorant in its own way. But again, you have no one to talk, and you have no cultural touchstones about that.
Right.
And it's only in my 20s, when I made a lot of Asian friends and moved to Vancouver and moved to Canberra, and I started to learn the history.
Yeah, it's again ignorance on my side as well because I love martial arts and I was into martial arts, starting from when I was a kid. And for me, kind of the whole Asian renaissance in the film industry that's happening right now, which I'm really happy about. Um, to me, it was a little odd because I watched so many Asian movies. To me, seeing Asian people in film is a completely normal thing.
Mm,
Seeing somebody who's a lead, seeing somebody who's a big star, seeing the whole Asian cast, that's a part of my reality. To me, that's norm. And then when Crazy Rich Asians came out, Aquafina, love her in that. When it came out, and everybody was saying how big of a thing it is, I got it, but it took me it took me a frame of reference of changing that. I was like, yeah, okay, it's big because for me, it's been I'm 46 years old. I've had that for the last 35 years at least.
right. I mean, you're right, because we had Jet Li was a big superstar for a long time,
Right.
and Jackie
Yeah.
Chan, and
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
Anyway, so it was interesting, but last thing on the kind of the whole background part that I found interesting, I wanted to ask you about is in our industry, in the industry of acting, it's probably one of the only industries where they can be as racist as they want because they are saying, hey, I don't care who you think you are. I need a Japanese person or I need a Russian. This is my background, right? They need that specific thing. So with you having a now, as you found out, kind of multicultural background, is that helping you? Is it hurting you? Has it been something that was even discussed? I don't know.
Um, you know, that's a whole thing too, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of the community is very divided over how specifically authentic it needs to be. And like on one hand, there is like this argument of, you know, understandably, East Asia isn't a monolith. Like there is a difference between being Chinese and Japanese and Korean, obviously.
Yeah.
But then the flip side, and the side I come down on, is look, it's about opportunity. And right now, there's not enough opportunity for us to be that specific because, like
Mhm.
if we start to get that specific, it cuts out a lot of like Southeast Asian actors. And also, if you just look at it from a purely equitable standpoint,
Mhm.
white actors have been allowed to play French, Italian, Greek,
Yeah.
Roman, and
You're
there's been
right.
no question about it. And I would, again say there is huge cultural differences between being French and Italian and British.
I agree.
So, unfortunately, it does come up. You'll see a lot of breakdowns that say, must be Japanese or must be Chinese, and I'm always a little. I mean, I get it when it's historical, but generally, I'm a little bit like I don't really subscribe to that.
I agree with you. I actually didn't even think about it from that perspective of white actors playing completely different, European nationals. I find it very funny when they're playing Russians and they cannot, you know, their accent is something that I couldn't even understand. There was a movie. I'm not going to mention it on the air, but there was a movie where the person said that he's Russian fluent and he's speaking, and I had to stop, rewind, and still it took me a few times to actually understand what they were saying.
Wow, wow.
But you're absolutely right. Is that why is this okay but not this? And I'm in agreement with you. It's if you're an actor, you're an actor. So yeah, I'm on that same side of the page with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, it
Mm.
is a complex and nuanced topic, but
It
yeah.
is. Um, but yeah, we will move on. There is no need to discuss it because we can have a whole show just on that, on that discussion.
I mean, probably,
Yes.
probably.
So the question that you get asked a lot, and I want to cover just a small aspect of it, of parents wanting you to be a lawyer or a doctor. I'm from a Jewish family, so we have those two choices, doctor, lawyer, and I'm neither. So I played a doctor, and my mom still cries saying you would have been a great doctor, and you see that, and why didn't you become a doctor? So I understand that part. So you becoming a lawyer, I totally get. And then telling your parents, yeah, I'm doing something else. I hear you. But that was in my mind, that was one of those like, I'm doing it and you're not going to stop me. I'm not going to tell you about it. Hopefully it works out, and if not, I'll go back. It's a gutsy move. I know you could have gone back to your other career, but that's a gutsy move.
Thank you. It's funny. Everyone says that, and it didn't feel like a gutsy move at the time. Um, Partially because there was like, well, if it doesn't work,
Right.
I'm gonna go back and be a lawyer. It's not the worst. I mean, like, soul crushingly it is, but like financially, it's not the worst
Yes.
backup plan. So, but I guess, I mean, I guess, I don't know.
Well, you weren't, I'm assuming, you weren't married at the time when you decided to move to Canada. You didn't have any kids when you decided to move to Canada. So that part was not as difficult. For me, 20 years in IT, and I still want to be an actor, but by that time I already have a family. I live in
Mm,
Chicago. I have two kids. So for me to really pursue it, or to go to New York, or to go to LA, or to go to Vancouver, or whatever, it's kind of like, well, you choose one or the other. And I'm not going to leave my family just to go and chase a dream of being an actor. So you do whatever things you can, and then hopefully something grows from it. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But that choice is
you're
different.
you're a good man, Alan. You're a good man. I respect that. I understand.
It was a hard decision because there were times in my life where I was so much into acting, where I thought this is me. I cannot not do acting, and it took a lot of soul searching to find that balance. And that balance, as all things, the yin and yang, uh, it's sometimes all the way on one end, sometimes on the other end, and then you have to kind of regain that balance. So I am, in a most honest and genuine way, I am really happy that you made your choice and that it worked out for you, because that's a lot of people dream of
Oh, well, thank you. And you know, you're still young, obviously. So I hope you. I
it.
mean,
Yeah,
you know what it's like. You could book the lead of a movie tomorrow. So I'm rooting for you,
I
man.
it's true. And here's kind of transitioning to some of the things that you have done, because you know acting opposite Mahershala Ali, I you know all of the roles that I have gotten, there's nothing even close to that. But I was on a check of veil, which for those watching, if you're not familiar, you're kind of they're deciding whether they're just going to send you a contract or maybe not. They're checking if you're available. So it's pretty far up for a recurring guest star on a Showtime series. So I was going to be acting opposite Ethan Hawke. And I remember kind of going through that same process that I heard you talk in the interview, in the other interviews that I've seen you do, which is, behind this, this is how we do stuff, right? So this is my background. I do my self tape, I submit it, and then I really don't think about it. I put the sides, on my table over there, and if I don't hear anybody say anything, those sides go into the wastebasket. But I don't think about it. And then you get to the point where they ask you for a callback or a check avail, and then all of a sudden, like, ooh, maybe this is the one. I'm sorry, it's a Showtime series. It's a guest star. It's a recurring guest star, and I'm going to be acting with who? And then the next part that I love when you mention it is you're thinking, am I going to suck if I'm going to be acting against Ethan Hawke? Am I going to be standing there thinking, what the hell am I doing here? Am I good enough? I don't even know. Thankfully, not thankfully, obviously, but I never got a chance to find out. But it's one of those things where you're going through the roller coaster of emotions, and then for you, you actually then went and you had a chance to do it. So how did that feel of being, now you already had a bunch of projects behind you, so you had that opportunity to work with really talented people. But what was it like with Mahershala Ali in the same scene? Was there any of the I don't know if I belong here type of things, or get in there and do it?
No, there totally was, man. And you know, and again, you're right. I've been fortunate to work with a lot of, very talented journeyman actors, which I think helped prepare me a lot. But
Yeah.
there was something else. Mahershala Ali is a two-time Oscar winner, and I had been a personal fan of his work for many years, which was another,
Me
yeah,
too.
right, like
Yeah.
another level. And then you know what it's like. Your first day on a job, there's always the first day jitters, and you're still always trying to figure things out. And then we were shooting during the pandemic, so then there was that, um, and that kind of complicated things in the early stages when they were still feeling everyone out.
Hmm.
They even had separate green rooms because they didn't want us relaxing together in between scenes because that would increase the risk even more. So
Yeah.
again, it's harder again to build that rapport, but
Yeah.
thankfully he is the most gracious, professional, generous, kind human being ever. So it was, he was wonderful to work with.
Very cool. Yeah. Was there? This is stupid, but everybody, each actor that I talk to, all of us know that we'll never do this, but all of us absolutely want to. When you're in a room with this star that you grew up watching and you're a huge fan of, it is unprofessional and no to ask them for a photo or to do anything, but all of us want to. So one of my actress friends who was with Forrest Whitaker, and she's walking down the stairs with Forrest Whitaker, and I'm asking her, how are you feeling in that moment? She's saying, I am freaked out that I have Forrest Whitaker on my arm. I want to ask him if I can take a selfie. And then the third part of me says, be in the scene. You're there to do a job. So any of those thoughts, like, okay, is there any way that I can ask and it be okay?
I don't, to be honest. I rarely get
Good,
those thoughts.
good.
I totally understand them, but I think it comes from, like I'm not. I think it's part of my personality because I'm not an overly sentimental person in general. Like I don't have a lot of the photos up in my apartment or anything, and that's not because I don't, have treasured memories, but I like keep them. I
Mm.
keep them here, and it's like a part of me is like, I get why people want to take selfies and get autographs because it commemorates the moment. But
Yeah,
I just, even in my personal life, never have that feeling. Maybe I'm a cold, heartless individual, but
you're not.
yeah.
You're not.
So
And it's interesting because again, I've had the pleasure of speaking to A-listers on the show, to legends, people who unfortunately have passed on, and I don't feel like I ever get starstruck. So I don't get that feeling. But that's me as a host and as a person. I can tell you that when I see a name come up and some of the people I've had on the show become friends, and I've watched them in many things over many years, and then that person is texting me or they're calling me and we're chatting, the non-host part of me is saying, what is happening? Is this real? Is this a different life that I'm leading? Because I'm the same person that I was a year and a half ago, and they didn't know I existed. And now I'm talking to them. How is that? So it's like it's that duality of split um, lives. Like I'm a host, I'm totally cool. Me as a person, I don't know. I'm completely thinking that it's the coolest thing ever. I don't know what I would be like as an actor. That's the part that I haven't experienced yet.
you will, and I totally feel you on the whole duality thing. That's so accurate and true.
Very cool. So how was that project? I know, in our industry, right? You shoot something and then it takes a while for it to come out. So you shot it during the pandemic. I wish we can talk of the pandemic as if it's over, but it's still ongoing. So you shot it. It's finally coming out. It has a bunch of really high-profile people in it. Is that I don't know. I mean, again, you've been to some high profile shows already. Do you consider this kind of the most high profile that you've been a part of, or The Man in the High Castle would probably be up there as well?
I mean, I think it's a good question. You have great questions. it's like I think on one hand you have, I think, like Supernatural, which ran for 15
Mhm.
years and had the most, in the best way, wild fan base. Like so passionate and dedicated and supportive. Then
Yeah.
High Castle, I think, was pretty high profile, but in some ways because it was controversial. And then, but I yeah. But then I do think you're right. This one probably just by the nature of it having Glenn Close and Mahershala Ali and
Mhm.
Naomi Harris in it, and it's Mahershala's first lead role, and so yeah, this is probably the biggest one I think. Yeah.
Very cool. So because again, in the industry, there's no there's no road that you're on. The journey is weird in every possible way. So being in kind of more high profile projects, and I know that it's coming out right now, but you've already had it on your IMDb and your agents and everybody knew about it. Has it opened any doors for you, or it's too early to tell whether it changed anything yet?
I mean, I, I think it's that interesting thing of like I don't know because I don't know the conversations that are being had by my reps, right?
Sure.
Like my first instinct is to say not really, but but what do I know, right? Like maybe
Right.
I got that tape and I wouldn't have got that a year ago, so
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's true.
Yeah, I also think it's an interesting thing of like part of like I think part of I tend to get cast a lot to play the person like my entire to do a good job, I have to almost like n- not exist in the film. Do you know what I mean? It's like because I'm there to support Joel De La Fuente in Man in the High Castle. I'm there to support Mark Shepard in Supernatural. I'm there to support Mahershala in Swan Song. So it's like it's their story. So in order to me to be an effective part of that story, I can't draw attention away from them. So to do a good job, I almost have to be like You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah,
roles where you're there to chew scenery and like be an interesting kind of character. You're there
right.
to just hold down the fort and be very steady.
So is that something that is the next step for you, where you want to have more of that responsibility? And does it mean more indies, or have you had that talk with your agent of saying, hey, this is kind of the type of roles that I want to pursue now?
Yeah, I do that on indies, which is fun. And like honestly, I don't know about you, but like I'm always just grateful to be there. And I'm still so young relatively, in
Mhm.
terms of experience in the business. So I, I just like learning, and I like just to watch Mahershala do his thing and watch Glenn or watch Joe De La Fuente. Like I learn so much, and that's invaluable. And I don't like I'd like good roles, and not that these haven't been good roles. They are good roles. It's so yeah, like whatever happens.
No, that's the best way to go about it, right? You have some things that you want to get, but then you're just continuing on your journey, because you never know. Like two of your roles at least started out as tiny roles, and then they grew into a much larger thing. How would you have known? You don't. You just do your job. You show up. You be professional, which I completely agree with you. You've mentioned that before. Of hey, it's not just your acting ability; it's your professionalism, and being a good guy and being somebody that others want to be around on set. So that leads to good things. So you're right. It's something that just takes off on its own.
Yeah, I mean, you hope, and I think when you look at like the trajectory of Mahershala's career, it's a bit like
Yeah.
that. He started off just grinding it out, and now he's Mahershala.
Yeah. Again, when the talent is there, everything else is kind of timing and hard work. So I want to ask you, because another question kind of popped up. One of my guests was in Django Unchained, and you know, she's worked with Tarantino before. He kind of wrote this role for her, and she recalls sitting at, if for those people who haven't seen Django Unchained, go watch it seriously. But it's a scene where she's at the table with Sam Jackson, with oh my god, now all the names are out of my mind, with basically incredible actors of their generation, with many Oscar winners right there in that room, and she found herself just watching them act, whereas Tarantino had to say, "Hey, it's your turn to do your line." And do you ever find, watching Glenn or watching Mahershala, where you kind of just watch them work, as opposed to for a moment forget that you're in the scene as an actor as well?
Uh, you know, I think I probably did slip a couple of times, but for the most part, I think I try to just to just be in it. But you're right. Sometimes it's just so surreal, and you're just like, what is? How am I even here? How is this even happening?
It's just again, watching like a Bridge of Spies, Mark Rylance. After
Mm.
the first few minutes, I turned to, I think I was there with my wife or my friends, and I said, if he doesn't win an Oscar for this, I don't know acting. He ended up winning an Oscar, but I can only imagine if I were in that movie, I don't know how I would be able to concentrate, because I'd be watching him and marveling at what he's doing.
I mean, I feel like you're good enough that you like he would just draw you in, and you would just be in it because he is so good.
I would hope so, because then hopefully I'd get out of my head and just be present. And then, after after I watch it, and then I'd be watching him. But then, actually, if I were in that scene, I definitely would not be watching the dailies. I'd be as far away from that as possible. Yeah. Did you get it? Good. Am I fired? No. Okay. I'm all right. Yeah.
I feel you.
Um,
I feel you.
a few more things that I wanted to touch upon that I found humorous, and I think other people really should know. When in one of your interviews you mentioned that after being in The Man in the High Castle, after playing a cop for 2 years, you went and you did an audition, and the casting director stopped you and said, really, you're just not very good, are you, at being a cop? Do you even know anything about being cops? Have you played a cop before? Like, it didn't seem like you told her, this is kind of where I just was for 2 years playing this role. I don't think you did that, but what, was that a part of you saying, you know, you brought me in here, it must have been a reason, right?
Well, yeah, I think it's always a twofold thing, right? Like the first reaction is to be like pretty annoyed and defensive and like,
Yeah.
you called me in, I just did this thing for 2 years, like, what are you talking about? But then the other part of me is also like, well, maybe I'm having a bad day, right? Maybe she's right. Maybe in this moment I'm not doing a good job. I mean, I often say to people, even Michael Jordan didn't get every free throw. Like even
Of course.
Serena didn't win every single point. So
Mhm.
a part of me is like, am I just having a bad day? Is she right? And
For sure.
then I think if I was and I've said this, I think, but I think if I was a younger actor, that would have been a very soul crushing day. But instead, I kind of just was like, well, if you don't believe it, I'm going to try again. And if you still don't believe it, I'm not
Right.
going to be able to convince you. So see you.
Yeah. The reason why I'm bringing this up, in addition to it being a fascinating story, is that in speaking to different casting directors on the show, I've noticed, and it was very, very therapeutic for me to have them on the show because I've noticed a particular trend, and that trend is they're just people. And what one casting director thinks is incredible, the other casting director thinks is the worst thing possible. And there is zero way for us as actors to play to what we think they want. Just be yourself. Some are going to love you, some are not. And that's as much control as you have over it.
Totally. That's good advice. That's
Yeah,
good
I
advice.
just I and you've done workshops, you've done all these things where you come in, you bring a tape, and they analyze in front of the whole class. And I'm watching that tape with the casting director, and I'm watching. I'm like, okay, so that was an acting choice I see that he just made. That was premeditated. Oh, this seems organic, but that was definitely something that he planned to do. And then the casting director says, "Oh my God, that was so natural. That was so organic." I'm thinking, you're so full of shit, because I know exactly what he did when he did it, and I saw the wheels spinning of him about to do it. Like, how do you not see that? And those are the people who are hiring. And it's like after a while, it just like, you know what? They're just people. They're gonna like what they're gonna like. That's it.
Yeah, it's so true, right? You can't please everyone. And yeah, it's a tough thing, isn't it, though? Because it's like I always say, it, because there is a level of subjectivity in our business, but then it's also so hard to like know what's right because it is like, if one person tells you you're drunk, maybe you're not. But if nine people tell you you're drunk, you're probably drunk. So it's like,
Right.
how do you step outside yourself and be like, okay, am I a terrible actor, or is that person wrong? And like it's always such an interesting thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think it is that kind of perception of, for me, it's the different types of people, right? So not nine casting directors saying that you suck as an actor, although that would be awful. But it's more of, my wife watched it, my friends watched it, a casting director watched it, my agent watched it, everybody said it's awful. Okay, then it's awful, right? It's the different perspectives, people
Mm.
from different parts of life. Then I get some conception with it. Otherwise, over the years, and again, talking to actors, I think everybody starts. It's like kids. When you have kids on set, what do we tell kids? Just be yourself, just play, just have fun, right? And then as we start taking acting classes, we start getting away from being yourself into be completely somebody different, be different, be different, be different, try this, try this, try this, try this. Then we get confused, and then we don't know what to be at all. And then at some point, we reach that point, which I even made a t-shirt out of it. It's called the fuck it moment, where you're basically saying, you know what? I'm done with all that. I'm just going to be me. I'm going to make whatever choices that feel right for me. I'm going to do it. while again, not being a dick, being professional and doing your job, but making the choices that you are happy with and just being with it. And then people start booking. And you're like, why did I just waste the last, 4 or 5 years trying all of this stuff on if all I had to do was just be myself?
Such a good description of the cycle of like artistic creation, man.
Again, there are all sorts of techniques. There's other beautiful stuff that we're learning along the way. It's not a journey that is wasted at all. But I think if more people continue to tell us, just be you, and you is a variable thing.
Mm,
You is a thing that changes depending on circumstance.
totally.
You is a thing depending. It changes depending on the historical reference. I developed my own kind of little training. My dog sees somebody outside, he's freaking out. I developed my own acting technique, which basically allows me to still be me, but be a different version of me. And I go into the history and I say, okay, at what moment could it have changed that would make me that guy? So I'm still me. I'm still very much rooted in who I am, but now I'm different. And as I go through that process, emotions change, physicality changes, uh, the speaking patterns changes, kind of the whole thing just all of a sudden evolves, and I become that character without having to work for it. And that works for me. Everybody has, kind of their own techniques, but it's still just me at the core, and then it just becomes a lot easier to do everything.
Totally. I love that. I love that a lot. I think we're a little bit similar in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, you're a lawyer, I'm IT. It's
Yeah,
we're left brain and right brain, so we think about it that way.
this is true.
Um, so, lastly, what at this point, right? You've made the transition. Knock on wood, you're a working actor, which is a great thing to have. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. Everything that we can do. Um, what drives you in life and in acting journey? What's the driving force?
I mean, i- in life, I think the older I get, I always come back to this Jewel quote actually from her song, which like in the end, only kindness matters. And and I think about the other one of like leave the world a better place than you found it. And so I think that's how I try to live my life. With varying degrees of success because I'm only human and we're all prone to be selfish assholes every now and then.
Yeah,
But for acting, I think I like acting because you can never perfect or master it. So that's what I love because you can never beat it. So you're just constantly trying to one up and learn more and grow. And I think it's a pursuit, that can last you a lifetime, which is what I. So that's kind of what drives me is just like, how do I get better? How do I learn more? How do I do more things? Yeah.
yeah, very cool.
What about you?
What drives me? At When I was going through my hopefully not a midlife crisis because I was quite young in it, but when I was going through that, the thing kind of the guiding light was a phrase that kept popping into my head of live your essence. So
Mm,
that to me continues being that driver of what is my essence, and then knowing the circumstance that I'm in, which now really sounds like acting quite a bit. Knowing the circumstance that I'm in, how can I be my essence while still existing in the circumstance with all of the specifics about it, the restrictions and the financials and the family obligations and certain health conditions, whatever it is. How can I be the essence that I am and continue developing that so I'm happy? You were a lawyer and you said you hated it. I hated IT. And I kept on hating IT, which was ridiculous because it was something that was allowing me to have a very, very good lifestyle and pay for all the things that I needed and my family needed. And I was grateful to it and I still hated it. And the reason why I hated it was because it was not the best expression of my essence. So
mm,
switching completely away, which I tried, and then I had to crawl back because the other thing didn't pay. So switching completely away was a way for me to go to my essence and then realize that no, the balance was not there. So the way that I'm finding that balance is I still have my IT job, and then I have my other things that I'm doing. And I don't hate IT anymore. I'm just respectful and grateful for it because I get a chance to do all of the other things. So what drives me is to try to figure out a way to have that balance and the most authentic expression of who I am while being able to pay for the things that I need to pay, and my wife not to divorce me because I don't, have any stability. Which in our profession, that's a I'm not even sure if it's a rarity. I think stability is just it's just a enigma.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that though. You're a very grounded man, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, and likewise, I really enjoyed talking to you. I know people will as well. Thank you so much for jumping on, and best of luck with the new Swan Song. I'm looking forward to watching it myself.
Oh well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the great conversation, and look, all the best to you too. Let's keep in touch. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks to everybody for tuning in to another episode of Let's Dive In. Lee Shorten, everybody. Please follow him. All the links are going to be right below the video. Go get Apple TV if you don't have it, watch it, and then comment below. Thank you.
thank you.